Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me. This is Studying the Bible with Brother Bolin. The other day, last week, I believe it was Friday, I was discussing the situation with the pastor, the African-American pastor that was basically exposing the Biden administration for the horrible policies that he's pushing forth and how that they are related spiritually. Today, I want to continue, as the Lord has laid upon my heart, the discussion and interrelation between politics and the spiritual realm. I'm going to repeat this. There is no such thing as politics over here and the spiritual realm over here. We praise the Lord in church. We speak in tongue, we clap, we read our word or whatever the case may be. And then when we leave the church building, we go about our business. That is not reality. What happens in politics on a local, state, and federal level, the decisions that they make in terms of policies affects all of us. There is a interrelation. There is a connection. There's no such thing as the physical realm over here and the spiritual realm over there. What you see in the physical three-dimensional realm is directly or indirectly influenced or controlled by what is happening in the invisible realm. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, spiritual rulers in high places. We're wrestling and dealing with extremely powerful spiritual forces that are operating in the first and second heavens. And they influence and manipulate and control the three-dimensional realm that we live in. So there's no such thing as a separation of church and state. We explained that last week that politicians, liberal politicians, use that as a way to shut the mouths of the church and Christians. We also learned a little bit about the 501c3. And if you read that, you understand what that's about. It's basically designed to hinder the voices of pastors and leaders in churches and keep them from speaking out and being involved in the political scene. Okay, so, and we also learned how that in the Old Testament was, if you look at it, the Old Testament was about politics. The Old Testament was about politics. Moses, Joshua, the kings, the good and the bad. It was about politics. The mixing of politics and spirituality, the mixing of politics and religion. As I said last week, and I'll say it again, it's when the two become one. When they merge and become one is where you have the problem, because then it becomes an issue of control and not salvation. Now, what I want to talk about today, as God has laid upon my heart, I want to talk about a subject that some of you may be familiar with and some of you may not be. And that is the counterculture of the 1960s. The counterculture of the 1960s. Now, for those of you who are familiar with the counterculture of the 1960s, we all know that the counterculture of the 1960s was a period of time in America where youth all over the country begin to rise up and oppose authority figures, i.e. the government, law enforcement, their parents, established religion, and for America, that's Christianity for the most part. Anything that had to do with authority and America and patriotism and naturalism. Patriotism is when you show being patriotic means having a love for your country. Loving your country, not worshiping your country, but loving your country. That's patriotism. The youth in America in the 1960s, early 1960s into the present, but mainly we're dealing with the 1960s when it really started jumping off, began to hate America. They began to oppose the ideas and the traditions of America throughout the country. And this is a time when you had these movements that was coming forward. You had these movements. You had the gay rights movement. You had the feminist movement. You had the civil rights movement, which were legitimate movements. Those are legitimate movements, but that's another story, and I digress. So yeah, but like I said, you had the feminist movement, you had the gay rights movement, you had the anti-war movement. All of these different movements were coming up, and they were geared towards a rebelling or a resisting towards the established traditional values of this country. So now let me say this, and so that we don't get a misunderstanding. There was rebellion in America wholeheartedly prior to the 1960s. Yes, there was rebellions. There was movements going on, but it was in the 1960s that it increased astronomically. It increased like never before. And one has to ask the question, why? Why did it increase, and what caused this big upsurge of rebellion that affected the minds of millions of young people, i.e. teenagers and people in their 20s, that caused them to rebel against the establishment, rebel against the government, rebel against Christian values, rebel against their parents. You saw children rebelling against their parents and not wanting to listen to their parents. You saw them rebelling against the government and hating on the government, rebelling against the church, rebelling against established religion and Christianity as a whole. If the church said something, they didn't believe what the church said, that it was just a mechanism of control. All this rebellion began to become a common concept in the 1960s. It increased in its intensity. But this leads to the question, why did this happen, and what caused this to happen? What caused the counter-revolution of the 1960s? Why did all these youth come out of nowhere and begin to rebel against their parents, rebel against the government, rebel against God and the Bible and Christianity? What was going on at the time that caused this rebellion? First things first, we have to always remember, as I said earlier, that what we see in the three-dimensional realm, the physical realm, is directly or indirectly influenced or controlled by what happens in the invisible realm. When you see negative things happening, for a vast majority of the time, a lot of times it's just natural cause and effect, just stuff, decisions we make that have consequences. But a lot of times when it has to do with rebelling against morality and rebelling against authority, there's something else going on, and that something else is in the spiritual realm. So what we see in the physical realm is a direct result or an indirect result of what happens in the invisible realm. So clearly, looking at this spiritually, we know that this was caused or energized by demonic spirits in the invisible realm. But why the 60s? What vehicle, rather, or what three-dimensional area, if you will, that these demonic forces use to manifest and totally corrupt our country? What caused this? That's what we want to get into, and that's what I'm going to discuss with you guys at length in my next video. In my next video, if God say the same, which will be tomorrow, follow me tomorrow. We're going to get into deeper detail, but I want to introduce you to the counterculture in this video. I want to introduce you to what the counterculture is, when it started, which was the 1960s, and what it is. Where the youth all over the country, teens and people in their 20s, began to rebel against the established authority. Excuse me. This was also a time where you had what was known as the British invasion. You had the Beatles coming in. You had all these rock groups coming in, the Grateful Dead, Rolling Stones, all these different the Doors, all these different rock and roll groups simultaneously. I'm pretty sure y'all catching on to what I'm saying here. I'm giving you little bits and pieces of it. This is also at the same time when rock and roll groups, like I said, the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, the Doors, Led Zeppelin, all these rock and roll groups simultaneously began to enter into our country And many of these groups were from Great Britain. They weren't from America. They began to simultaneously enter into our country, okay, during the same time that this rebellion, this national rebellion began in America among our youth. Something was going on. And that something that was going on has carried on to this present day. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, spiritual wickedness in high places. We're wrestling against demonic forces, powerful demonic forces that will blow your mind. And when I share with you tomorrow, the Lord should say the same. The groups and the individuals that brought this great rebellion in America, it's going to blow your mind. Let me end the video with this. The counterculture of the 1960s was not a spontaneous event. And what I mean by that is, it wasn't just a bunch of young people that got together and said, you know what? I'm getting so tired of listening to my parents. I'm getting so tired of listening to the government. I'm getting so tired of listening to the Christians and the church and everything. I'm getting tired of this. Let's just start rebelling. It wasn't a bunch of young people that just got up one morning and decided to band together and rebel against the established authority. It wasn't that. The counterculture of the 1960s was a planned event. It was a planned event by outside sources in the three-dimensional realm that were obviously influenced by the spiritual realm, but it was physical forces in the three-dimensional realm that brought about this counterculture that was designed to completely destroy Christian ethics, right and wrong, the moral fabric of our country. All of this was a planned event. It didn't just happen spontaneously. Don't believe the hype. Well, it just happened because kids got tired. No, 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 no. That's not what happened. It was planned. The counterculture was planned. And we're going to get into that tomorrow. The Lord should say the same. I hope you all have gotten somebody this introduction to the counterculture of the 1960s. Join me tomorrow where we will continue our discussion and I will show the relationship of the spiritual realm and elaborate on that more with the relationship of the spiritual realm and the counterculture of the 1960s until this present time today. If you all have learned anything, if you have anything to say about this, leave your comments in the comment section below. If you like this video, press the like button, share this video, and subscribe. God bless you all, and see you again on Studying the Bible with Brother Bowling.